Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next WASTELESS WORLD Talks are here again with Bill and Kevin. And today we have a really easy topic. We will speak about silence. And Bill, you are on the top from my point of view. So first question for you. If you close your eyes, what you see or hear if I say silence?
There was a great Simon and Garfunkel song from the 60s, The Sounds of Silence. Um, but I'm going to push that aside. But that was the first thing that entered my mind. The silence, there's lots of phrases that have silence as the subject or in the phrase, like silence is golden. There was a famous horror book and movie written, The Silence of the Lambs. Uh, so the word silence gets a lot of play, but this is the first time I can remember digging down into the meaning. So thank you for that word, for using that word. The first substantive thought that comes into my mind on that is what we just said before we started, and that is someone said, "How are you?" And we said, "Good" or "Fine." But what we're really doing is showing our silence because we're not letting the other people or the person who asked, "How are you?" We're not letting them see or hear what's really going on. So I'm keeping that silence. I'm behind a wall that I have put up there when I say, "Fine, I'm fine."
Okay, what about you, Kevin?
I think silence is what we hear when there's currently a genocide going on, and we hear nothing but silence. And silence is what we hear when NATO is fighting a proxy war against Russia and letting Ukrainians die for it. And what we hear is silence. So for me, silence is complicity and guilt.
If are you do you connect this term with some color?
Color?
Yes.
How do you mean?
Whether silence is darkness or black, or whether it is white, or whether it is red because of blood.
Yeah, I would say it was black for shame.
And you, Bill?
I would say that it's white um, because there's nothing there.
It's interesting. You know, I was considering we are writing the new legislation together, the declaration, and you know, I don't know whether we should have a right to for silence, but what resonated with me a few days ago, I would like to start. I would like to have a globally a day of silence, and the name is the Day of Silence for Wasteless World because, and I don't mean silence only of we can speak even it can be silence even if we speak, but even the disconnection from all media, from all digital stuff and so on, that will be the day of silence. Can you imagine that for 24 hours people get silent in this way? It will be a lot of time for rethinking.
Yeah, contemplation day.
And if it will be globally, the operators of the media and internet, you know, that will be such a huge difference in all aspects of our life. It will be very interesting. This is why probably, Bill, we don't hear about it so much frequently. I know the song Enjoy the Silence, of course, that's a beautiful one. So it's one of my favorite. But, and it's, what is interesting, it started with the darkness. The darkness, little friend, and so on. So it's quite interesting.
I think one interesting thing is that silence is definitely the enemy of media. And as media is the enemy of truth, some silence could only be good for all of us.
This is what I think, yeah, because I have in the noon discussion, I have their pet from Australia, and I have their a member from not Palestine, but from Philippines. And of course, these two countries are very different. Society is different, so the size, of course, and so on. And generally, the people in Philippines are more talking, so they are more social in a way, which we lost already in Europe. So the families and big families and all they are together. So she said that for them, silence will be very difficult, but probably very healthy. So I think there are many layers of silence.
But silence also can be a bad thing. As with everything, there is good parts to it and not so good parts to it. But if my wife and I, for example, were to not speak, or my coworker, if we were to not speak, eventually that would add up to, or that would construct the silos, and then the suspicions. So being transparent and talking, I think is, so I think silence can be taken to an extreme.
I can tell you that when you will be not speaking with your wife, after 5 years of not speaking, you will not realize that anymore. It's my own experience, so I can tell you, after that, you will not even recognize that we are not speaking together. So unfortunately, it's not a funny part, but it is so. So you get used to it. And a question: do you work in silence if you write a book or something, or do you have a music or some background there? What is better for you?
Everybody's different. I cannot have any distraction or my thought gets derailed.
And you, Kevin?
I listen to music, and yeah, normally very loud German techno music, because it has this constant drive. And so the hours just fly by. And it has no words.
That's interesting. When I'm writing dialogue, I'm listening to the dialogue in my mind, and my fingers don't go fast enough. Yeah, I guess we're different in that way too.
I do remember when I was a kid and I was learning for school, I need 3 inputs. I need to read a book, to listen to a radio because there was no internet and we have TV quite late, and then I can learn. I cannot do without, so I need at least 3. And so I was a multitasker for a long time until I was 40, then I realized that it does not work, and I developed the core task management. But it was quite interesting. But today, despite the fact I have my own office, the walls are thick, I can put music here, I prefer silence as well. Or when I write on a unicycle, silence or music, which is matching the mood of the ride. So it can be a serious music, it can be Metallica, it can be a different, really very different types of music. But in general, I welcome the silence. It's somehow, I feel good in to be silent, but at the same time, I like speaking. So it's I think there must be the balance. But I like the idea of day of silence. I will try.
The interesting thing about silence is there's so many different types of silence. There could be contemplative silence, Silence can represent defiance, where you refuse to speak to somebody, you refuse to comply. Silence can be in mourning, silence can be grief, silence can be happiness. It can be so many different things.
For me, I've never been able to listen to the audiobooks as I walk along or as I'm walking on the beach, have music or audiobook in my ears. I've never been able to do that. When I'm walking or even riding in the car, I'm always listening for. I remember my dad used to say to me, he said, "Mac, how many different things do you hear right now?" And the first time he said that, I thought, well, I don't hear anything. But when you listen, then of course you hear that bird, you hear that faraway jet plane, you hear somebody talking in the next apartment. There's just so many things that are going on all the time, right? And if I do this, I'm not going to hear it. I'm not going to be plugged in.
I have just seen, we discussed last time the Apple whatever new stuff for the glasses. And I have seen a designer update. So it does not only cover the eyes, it covers the nose and deliver some smells. It covers the ears to deliver the music. And it even covers the mouth so you can speak without being listened to. So you completely shelter yourself. The only which are the touch, and of course the hands are used to make the moves.
I described that 15 years ago in the book called The Dogs of Luck. And I described how the travel industry will be put out of business because of the virtual reality, along with sensors embedded in the gloves, and you'll be riding on a book. And I was skiing, and I in my living room, and I was feeling the cold. I was hearing the shush, shush, all of this. Um, so so whoever just came up with that must have read my book.
I am sure he or she did.
I think also, guys, there's two kinds of insidious silence. One is censorship, and the other is, this one is really, and I think about it a lot. I was talking to a hearing doctor, and he was saying that most people don't go deaf overnight. It's a very gradual process. And they said at first you don't notice things missing. He says most people, when they're starting to go deaf, the first things they will lose is birdsong. And it's a very beautiful thing, but once it's gone, you don't actually notice it's gone. And then after that, of course, it will become more and more serious until you can't understand what people are saying to you. And that's the kind of silence that I don't think anybody wants to experience in any way.
When we spoke in the noontime, I mentioned one of the Czech composers. He lived in late 19th century, and he composed many things, but among others, something which is called My Country. It's a very famous. It's 1.5 hour really orchestra, unbelievable strength. And he composed it at the time when he was deaf already. But it is so, I will share it after. It is so unbelievable. If you just close your eyes, you will be there. And I love to listen to that when I ride on a unicycle, in the morning when there is the fog going up and so, and I'm riding and crying. It's so powerful to understand how genius he was. And he was not deaf all his life. He lost, as you described, he lost his hearing. And even now, I'm in a stage where on my right or left ear, I do not hear so well. And generally, I enjoy it because I don't hear noises which are disturbing for my wife or daughter. I can sleep better because if the neighbors are loud, I don't care because I don't hear it. So it's quite interesting. So I am in a stage when I enjoy this, let's say, stage of illness. So I really enjoy the silence. And there has been right now Depeche Mode recently on Sunday and Saturday or Friday, two concerts here. And they have Enjoy the Silence, this song, which is quite interesting. It's quite, I will say, quite powerful song. So at least the music, so as the lyrics. So
I think it's Enjoy the Silence. They made a video where they were playing it live, and it starts in, I don't know where it was, in the mid 80s. And then it changes and goes through the years. Just this one song, but different cuts at different periods. So you can see them getting older and getting bigger and playing to bigger audiences. Fantastic. Really, 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 really good.
I will find it because I was not there. My daughter with my wife was there on the concert. And it's fascinating. The other singer is 61 and he was jumping like a rabbit on the stage. So head down. He is really good.
But the silence of censorship is, I was reading a really interesting article this morning about, it was written by a Norwegian professor, and he was explaining that in the West, the lies in our media have become so blatant that it's actually the media has lost credibility and is losing its power and its grip over us because it has gone too far. We're no longer being manipulated. We are being lied to, and we're starting to see through the lies. And I think that's extremely encouraging.
Build on that. We've talked before how our world, where we get our sense of right and wrong and our sense of direction and purpose, has changed enormously since since I can remember in the 60s, where you believed your politicians, you took what the priest on the altar said as, I almost said as gospel, but they knew, the politicians and the religious people, they knew what was truth and the right way. Of course, they were all old white men, maybe some not so old, but they were all old. They were all white and men. And since then, we've had Watergate. We've had priests abusing altar boys, um, and dislocating indigenous people, separating them from their families. And all this has come out recently. So, and the media, we used to listen to Walter Cronkite on the 6 o'clock news. We don't do that. All three of them are gone, and others as well. Um, so, what kind of world do we have now? Uh, where do I look for truth, or where do I look for definition of fairness, or and so on? My grandchildren, Noah and James and Sophie, where are they going to look for purpose and direction and what is good?
It's actually true. You think the two major events going on in the world at the moment, in Palestine and in Ukraine, where to find the truth? I have no idea. I know what sources not to trust, but to find the truth is extremely hard work.
It is hard work, and that's a good way to describe it. It is hard work because you have to listen, judge, listen, judge, listen, judge, and when somebody says something, you ask for the source. And so it becomes very hard work to know what to believe. Or you can just make life easy on yourself and just accept what the tribe tells you to accept. which is I think it's an increasingly common response. I don't know if it's increasingly common. It's all too common.
Yeah,
Silence.
yeah, exactly. That's where the silence comes from. It's when when you don't know, so say nothing.
You know, it's quite interesting. I had yesterday a discussion with a researcher. I found a researcher who writes about Industry 5.0, and she put it on her profile that she is Industry 5.0 ambassador. So crazy stuff. So I introduced myself and sent her some of the materials, and she said, "You cannot be Industry 5.0 founder. You are not academician. I am taking my knowledge from the people who are well known in the world." And she sent me some link, and I said, "Sorry, I am. So what should I do? So should I delete myself or whatever?" We have a quite interesting discussion, but it was even more interesting up today in the morning. Yesterday, I have learned that KPMG input Industry 5.0 in their newest report. It's quite interesting. And the next, that the Royal, how it's called, the Royal Society, whatever, some UK well-known non-profit, whatever, who gave awards, they are awarding a man who said, "I am Industry 5.0. I never heard his name before. So it's so interesting. And copying to this, I wrote shortly after Christmas time, I wrote a short Czech blog. I call it one pager. And I name it the Archimedes bus tube. You know, because we know the Archimedes law, that if you put something in the water, it will flow over and it's complicated and whatever. But nobody in the history, or at least as I know, considered that he must make this test somewhere, probably in a bus tube. So I take this idea and I said that during the archaeological whatever, they found his bus tube and make really fun out of it. Yeah, that he crossed the river of the death with it, and he was a sexual whatever. I posted, and the people start to write me and ask whether it's really true. Whether really his bus tube was found, and whether he was really traveling the world with the bus tube.
Yeah, with his name on it.
Exactly.
A little plaque.
But it was, I did not expect it, this reaction. Usually when I write, I am, let's say, serious. But this time when I was writing that, I was laughing. It was unusual. It was so crazy. I never expected people will believe in it.
Well, maybe you need to open a museum and you could put Archimedes' bathtub and Newton's apple, which became fossilized. And there's probably hundreds of other items that you could put in this museum, and people would come from all over the world to see your museum.
It's not a bad idea, to be honest. So, but here we are. You said it's a hard work. Yes, it is. It is. Thinking is hard work. So not to think, it's easy. But usually the people who do not think, they do not use silence. They are very loud.
Right, right.
There is, yeah, there's whole industries devoted to enabling us not to think. You have sports, media, entertainment, the internet, you name it, it's all designed for one purpose, and that's to keep us, or maybe it's not designed for that purpose, but the end result is we don't think, we don't need to think.
There is an Australian channel, YouTube channel. I will send you the link. I think Juice Media, and they make fun out of governments, and they're really with no limits. So they are really, really strong. And the latest chapter was quite interesting because it was about the whistleblowers in Australia. There has been generally on the political level 2 of them, and one of them goes to jail because he was whistleblowing.
What is that word you're saying? Whisk blowing?
Whistleblowers. So the people,
Whistleblower.
Oh,
whistleblowers.
whistleblower.
Sorry,
Yeah.
whistleblowers.
Good.
So,
Whistleblower.
yeah, and they agreed on a law to protect this. It's called a whistleblower protection law, something like that.
We have the same thing in the U.S.
And at the end, the lady, and you will have a fun to watch it. At the end, the lady say, "Do you know why it's named so? Because it protects against the whistleblowers." That's really, and it's a real man, real case who reveals some crime in some of the wars. I don't know where generally. I do not remember. But at the end, she said, "Yes, it is here to protect against the whistleblowers." You see Assange, so exactly the same story. So it's quite interesting. So it's the hijacking of language. It's so common, and what is great about silence, and we touched it several times, silence is the only thing which in every language sounds the same. No matter whether you speak Chinese, Czech, whatever, silence will all the time sound the same. So this is a common part of a language, and if there will be no silence, there will be generally no language, because we cannot speak without taking the breath. So silence is a very important part, but we never learn about it. As you said at the very beginning, Bill, you never thought about silence in a way as we discuss it right now. So it is quite interesting that something, again, we are touching something which is everywhere, everybody have it, but we don't even consider it is here and we can use it. This is why really I think and I'm sure United Nations will not be the one who will call for the day of silence. In contrary, they need more shouting and so on, showing right now the frequency of the tweets of the boss and many others on a Twitter. It's so frequent that there is nothing else than their calls. And never they said all the time, all of you have to change, but they never say we will change. So the same story. It's quite interesting. And this is why I think that we can use the good side of silence, but you are right, they are both. It can be a good silence and a bad silence as well. So if a victim must be silent and not to tell, it's wrong. So it's quite interesting. So I have to set up the museum.
In England, the genius politicians there, they haven't banned protests, but they've made a new law saying that if the protest upsets somebody, then it's illegal.
I'm offended by what you just said.
Exactly that, yeah. And who gets to decide? The police, of course, the world's most wonderful, fair-minded arbiters. So you can be arrested if a policeman thinks that your protest may upset somebody.
Is this real?
Yeah.
Or is...
No, it's real. It's real.
Just shortly before we started this event, I have read that Sri Lanka government decided to send back all Russian who are in the country, who seek the asylum in the country, and all Ukrainians by law generally, that they have to go back, because there is already established a flight connection. And the second thing, the asylum was for 2 years. That was the setup, and 2 years just expired generally. So and it's quite interesting. In Sri Lanka, I think 1.6 million Russians and 20,000 Ukrainians.
Really?
The numbers have been surprising for me. So that's such a big difference. I did not count with the Russians. I count with the Ukrainians, but not with the Russians in such a quantity. It is disproportionate.
You wonder how much 1.6 million Russians would contribute to the net wealth of the nation. You think it must be quite considerable.
I know that a lot of the Russians who left were younger, were the more entrepreneurial, uh, were the more technologically advanced. So, so Russia lost a lot of advantage for their future. And if they went to countries like Sri Lanka, then that would be good for Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
I think in Germany it was decided yesterday or day before yesterday, the law that the asylum seeker must work. They cannot just take the money from the state, but they really must work. It's a recent one, I think last week or day before. I do not remember. There are so many news. So it's really changing, and right now it is even so hard to get it in an appropriate picture if the truth, which you mentioned, Kevin, is not really clear. So, of course, I don't like Russians. One, partly because of the history, but I have friends there as well. So it's not about the country all the time. It will be about few people who do most evil, but are at the power. Of course, we can speak about Trudeau and almost every politician generally. So there are very few at the moment who really. You remember? I think it was Lula in Brazil. He took the role at the time when we have already our talks. I think so. Last year, somewhere in the middle, something like that. And today there are huge protests against him. I just saw the images. So it's really the people are changing so fast when they are on the on the power that so they are manipulated easily. You are on the power, but in fact we know. So they are just the speaking heads, nothing else, talking heads.
In the U.S., of course, we're going through our primaries. We had each state is having their primaries to come up with their candidates for the election in November, and um, the media will tell you what the polls say, who has a certain percentage and how many are uncommitted and so on. But I can feel a huge gap, and that it's a chasm, it's a canyon of between what the media loves to shout and update and use clickbait and all of these very bothersome habits that they've picked up. Walter Cronkite in the 60s did not use any of these, but there's a huge silence in America, which sounds funny because there's so much shouting going on in America. But it just feels as though there are so many people who are not going to shout, they're going to wait to pull the lever in November. And um, I hope that that's true. But I feel that silence. So many people, everyday people, just saying, "I'm not going to partake in that," and just so this huge silence in the political world.
It reminds me a few months ago, I told you about this tea against the coughing that it's get blue when
Yeah.
and it's great. But last week I discovered it can be pink if you put lemon inside. Which was not my discovery, somebody told me, but I tested immediately. What is interesting that the blue disappeared, but the pink remains there. And
We still use it almost every day.
try it with lemon. It's of course
I'm going to go do that right now.
It's a really great color, and it keeps the blue disappear after maximum 4 hours, but here it keeps. And I make a. You remember the movie from I think 80s, the Death Fit Hair with Meryl Streep, or how they have this longevity vial and they cannot be killed, and it was quite funny movie. And I remember there was a longevity vial, So I make a video of making the blue one, which was for the men, but it disappeared. And then I have one for women in pink. And I just wonder whether it will happen the same like with Archimedes, whether will people start to contact me because of this wonder drink.
Do you remember that at school we used to have to do this litmus test where you had blue paper, and if it, I don't know what it was meant to represent, but if it had something, it turned to pink. So don't you think you're just drinking liquid litmus?
It is possible. To be honest, this whatever it is, I don't know what is the name of in English of this chemical glass. I found it in a factory. It's generally 60 years old. I don't know what was there before, to be honest. So I am fine with it.
I hope you cleaned it out well enough before you put your tea in it.
You do? Okay. For sure. Yeah, I did. So, but you know, it is exactly like with the news. You know, you have the news and then it does not fit, so you put a little lemon in it and it changed the color, and immediately
Perfect.
it is still, yes, we will go for it. And nobody tell you it was just a lemon, you know. Quite interesting. Robert in UK, which is a professor, he is having great videos about energy and renewable technologies and so on. He discovered there is a quite interesting old technology which was using blue inked paper, let's call it so. And this change of color of this blue ink paper can be made by heat, and it generates electricity. So you generally can use this very old technology to generate electricity in a very small volumes, but somehow the change of color has something to do with the chemical physics, whatever. I'm not good in that, but it was so interesting, so interesting. So let's use the silence to really wake up the global movement, to let the people think. Let's give them 24 hours to think for themselves. Some will become crazy, I'm sure, because 24 hours with him or herself be in the head only can be quite destructive. But on the other hand, I do believe that 99.9% of all humans all around the globe will understand. If we say that it is for the wasteless world, the next day will be different. So maybe that will be the end. So we have 1 minute 30 to the end.
But imagine in a day of silence, how much could be written?
Wow. How many touch will be there? You know, people will speak with the touch of their hands. Okay, so we are almost at the end. I would like to thank you for a great discussion about the silence. And just to tell you about the silence, you know about these talks about nothing. On Monday, I will have the governor of Czech National Bank speaking about silence. So have a nice time. Free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, free, and use the silence the right way. See you next week. Bye-bye.